We're in Old Town at the Carl Street Studios. There is no Carl Street left in Chicago. It's now called Burton Place, but these studios were built when the street had a different name. It's a very unusual place, very eccentric. Building built in the 1880s that then in the 20s was renovated into an arts colony, right?
Correct.
And this is Millie Rosenblum, who's going to show us one condo made of 3 of those former smaller units.
That's correct.
This is, Millie, you've got to be so happy. I love coming to this building, and you've got to have so much fun showing this.
It's just, I've never had a listing that was so different like this one. It's just eccentric, it's quirky, it's interesting, it's full of art. It's just a beautiful place.
And it's not full of art because the owners are art collectors. The space itself is artful.
That's right. The materials used in here is what's the art.
We'll talk, because there's some construction going on nearby. We'll talk more about them when we go inside. But it's Saul Kogen is the developer and Edgar Miller, the artist. The two of them together were just a really fertile team.
That's correct.
Why don't we go in? It's getting noisy out here.
Okay.
So Millie, we talked outside about the two men who collaborated on making these buildings what they were.
Yes.
But now I guess we're in the home of the man who sort of brought them back to life in, what was it, 1984?
1984.
Tell me about him.
Well, Mark Mamelin bought the property from Sal Kogen's daughter, who had passed away in 1978.
Oh, I see.
So in 1984, he bought the building, and he then converted it into condominiums.
It had been rentals the whole time.
That's correct. He retained 2 of the units for himself, and he lived in the building. He then approached Edgar Miller, who was in retirement and living in California at that time. And he engaged Edgar Miller, brought him back to revitalize the whole building again.
So what we see in this unit, this is where Marmalin lived, right?
That's correct.
In 2 units, and then your sellers bought a third.
Yes.
We're looking at 3 units combined.
That's correct.
And what Miller did, what we see in this one is work by Miller in the early days as well as near the end of his life.
That's correct.
That's great. And that starts with some of this kind of glass.
Yes, the stained
The
glass.
things he did, we're going to see that he did glass and tile and wood and used materials in ways that nobody else ever did,
Right.
at least in Chicago.
Yeah.
Why don't we take a look in the dining
All
room?
right.
This dining room, one of the things I love about my job is that I get to go into rooms like this. This is unbelievable. This has got, I think some of this parquet flooring might have come out of an older house. Is that right? Do we know?
This originally was in the mansion when it was built in the 1880s.
Oh, this is from the original house.
This is.
Oh,
This
wow.
is all restored. And what you see here, all these built-ins here, this was all supervised by Edgar Miller and done by a craftsman
Oh, wow.
under his supervision, along with the table and the chairs also.
Oh, these were made
Yes.
for this room.
Yes, exactly. And they've
Wow.
been here for many, many years.
Oh, that's terrific. Yeah, you can see the sort of the carving on the backs of the chairs matches the railing there on the shelf.
Yes.
But what you really have to see is that glass. This is the Edgar Miller.
This
The
is
glass is
all
just
Edgar
so
Miller.
amazing.
Right.
I wonder if those are his initials, EM, there in the glass.
That is.
That's wonderful. This has got to be one of the most unusual rooms you could ever find.
This whole 2-story room was originally how it was when it was built in 1880s. But then Edgar came in the early 1900s, and that's when he did the fresco carved in plaster that you see in the wall there.
That to me is one of the best details in this whole place. And the nice thing is, it's still here. I wonder what the condition was in the 80s before the building was restored. Any idea?
I have no idea.
Wow. But you've got the fresco, you've got the
All
glass.
the stained glass. And then to your left, there's some more stained glass here.
Oh, yeah.
And he signed the bottom of this one over here.
Oh,
It's a signed
Edgar Miller.
piece.
And Saul Kogen.
Yes.
March 1928.
And then some of the tile that you see borders around this carpet area, he had an apprentice. His name was Taurus. And this is some of the work that Taurus did. And you'll see some other areas in the house that I'll point out to you.
The great thing about this look is that it looks like anything. It's that crazy quilt. It's a mix of colors, a mix of sizes. It's not one style, and it's sort of every style.
Right. And around this arch over here, as you enter into the sunroom, you can see that Edgar Miller carved these animals into this arch. And that's done in plaster.
Oh, wow. Just really unlike any other place you're going to see. It's really terrific. Then up above, we've got this ceiling.
Yes, and this was
Carved.
done by the same craftsman that did all the built-ins, and Edgar Miller supervised him.
Now, one of the reasons to see this kitchen is just that it's a cool kitchen, but the other is you could have told me this was original, but it's not.
It's not original. Originally there was like a bar in here and an old kitchen, and it was sort of cut up. So in 2003, they hired Catherine Quinn, the architect, to come in, revamp the space, change it, design it, and then they used Karen Mosner, the interior designer, to make the cabinets and to make the kitchen and everything feel like it was originally. All the tile that you see here was in this home in one area or another, except for 4 pieces that you see in the wall.
The biggest ones
The
we can
biggest
see with the
ones,
starfish.
Exactly.
It's nice. It adds to the quilt. So all of this tile came from somewhere in the place.
Yes.
It's nice. So it feels as if it fits together. The glass, though, I'm pretty sure that
Original.
must be original.
The glass is original.
That's great. So everything sort of comes together, whether new or old. So then out here is the breakfast room next to the kitchen.
Yes, and originally when it was owned by Kogen and Edgar Miller, this was a couple of rooms and used for different reasons. And then when the current owner purchased it, they opened it all up. They made it the breakfast room, a little sitting area.
Oh, wow.
And how interesting the variety of different kinds of glass you'll see throughout.
Yeah, I can't get over it. We've got 2 different sizes of glass brick. We've got the sort of bottle bottoms. That's not what they are, but they look like set into the walls and almost a dovecote. You've got the channel glass. You've got more of that great Edgar Miller sort of geometrical stained glass. And then you've got the tile. You've got the animal carvings. In this, the stone. In this room, it's almost as if all the materials kind of come together. Wow. Oh, and we've even got a curvy ceiling. We've got that sort of undulating ceiling above the window.
Yes.
Everything happens here. This is amazing. So now we've come to a landing. We're on the 2nd floor above that main living floor. And there are
Yes.
how many bedrooms on this level?
Three bedrooms.
And 2 of them have these really cool carved doors, carved and painted by Miller the second time here.
The
is here,
second
right?
time around. After he came out of retirement, he did the work here on the 2nd floor. So that was in the late 1980s.
The
That's
animal
all
theme,
carved.
that's all carved and painted.
Yes.
The animal theme as it moves through the house is really, really interesting. He clearly had sort of a fascination. And then there's this other work, this nice parquetry. It almost looks 3-dimensional the way the frame zigs and zags in front of the bedrooms. Everybody's got a sort of 3D threshold. Great. And then through here we end up on the roof,
Yes,
is that right?
we're going to the roof deck now. And on our way up, we'll see some stained glass windows.
As well as this courtyard. This is probably the place to point out. We're looking at the rest of the Carl Street Studios. This is a central courtyard that almost everybody looks into from this building, right?
Yes. And as you'll notice, as we come up here, you'll see stained glass signed by Edgar Miller. And that was done in 1988.
That's great. Carved wood, all kinds of details that you can't even keep track of how many details there are worth looking at. Up here, just on the way to the rooftop, we've got these clear story windows all the way around in the stained glass. The lodge pole carved. It's just, like everywhere they looked, they thought, oh, we got to put something there too. And it really works.
And here you have a handle. That's an animal that was carved out by
Oh,
Edgar
yeah.
Miller on the front
Oh,
door
wow.
leading out to the deck.
That's great. Let's check out this deck, especially because it's a really gorgeous day. We came out onto the deck because it's beautiful and we have to be outside. One thing we missed is the master bedroom. And it's got glass. It's got, what I love is that sort of stripe-laid wood floor, which you kind of wonder why more people didn't do it. It's got a really sharp graphic look. It's got the skylight. The master bedroom itself is really sort of a work of art. We've talked about how there's art all through the building. The building itself is the art. But from up here, not only do we look out over the rest of the building, as we've done before, but we look out over the whole neighborhood. And of all of these buildings, what's interesting is everything we're looking at is mostly rectilinear,
Yes.
except for this building where there's barely a right angle.
Right. That's true.
Really,
That's true.
it's one of the most unusual places you can ever find in Chicago.
It's just nestled in on a dead-end street, sits quietly all by itself, and yet around it you have the Gold Coast and you have the Old Town, so you can walk to the theaters and you can walk to the restaurants, and it's just very quaint.
Don't you think Miller and Kogen would be really proud of the way it is today?
Yes, I do.